Today is a big day. We're starting a brand new series called Running with the Giants. And I am super excited about this series. I am not a Giants football fan, so if you're here today, if you're a Giant fan, that's okay. Jesus still loves you, but that's okay. We might not love you, but Jesus does. Okay. But anyway, Running with the Giants, what is that about? Today we're starting a series, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It's one that I have wanted to do for a very long time. And I want to kind of explain, I want to get right into it today to explain, what does it mean to run with the Giants? Why would we pick that, and why are you excited about it? So here's why, okay? It's found in the book of Hebrews chapter 12. And what I'd recommend today is this. We give out a handout, and you're going to want to take some notes today because we're going to say a bunch of really amazing stuff that you're going to want to write down. But more than that, I believe God has something for you today that you're going to want to write down and make sure, because there's going to be some very practical things that you're probably going to want to write down and be able to utilize in your life. So please do that. You can turn with me in your Bibles, your Bible apps, however you want to do it, and it is on the outline. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1, it says this, therefore, and I'll pause there. Sorry, I didn't get very far. It says therefore, which anytime in the Bible, just a little bit of interpretation lesson on how to read the Bible, whenever you see the word therefore, you need to ask the question, what is it therefore? Okay, that's really silly. By the way, if a communicator says therefore, you need to ask, why are they using words like that? But okay, sorry. They're usually pastors. But if anyone uses the word therefore, even if it's not in the Bible, you need to ask the question, why did they say that? Because usually the word therefore is linking two thoughts. It's saying, whatever I just said is now being linked here. And what he's about to do is he's about to give us something very practical in Hebrews chapter 12, but he says therefore because it links what happened in Hebrews chapter 11. You can read it for yourself, but Hebrews chapter 11 is really what that is. It's called the Faith Hall of Fame, okay? And what that means is it's listing some heroes of the faith, if you will. Some giants of the faith are listed in Hebrews chapter 11. Now, if you're a sports fan, and I don't know how many we had, first service we didn't have any, so it really fell flat, my illustration. It only made sense to me, which is okay. But if we were looking at a sports hall of fame and we said, hey, who are the greatest athletes in the world, both living and maybe have passed on, if we said, hey, they are listed here. If it were basketball, I would say, who would y'all think would be in there? Just at least one name. Michael Jordan, who LeBron James will never replace. No matter how good he gets, he will never be Michael Jordan. No one's ever as good as Michael Jordan. We remember him better than he was. But anyway, he was awesome, right? But he would be there, right? LeBron James would be there too. I get it. And so you got some heroes of the basketball court that would be there in the stands. You got, if it's football, it would probably be a Redskin, but it's been so long since we won a game that I can't remember. So I'm kind of like, I got to kind of go back to the 90s, and I realized most of the people, like I look at the younger people in the room, they're like, I don't remember a time that the Redskins won the Super Bowl. I'm like, it happened. I was there. Okay. Anyway. If it was baseball, I don't know how many people remember Babe Ruth. Okay. You watch Babe Ruth play? Oh, I'm just playing. But Babe Ruth would be in the stands, okay? I mean, he would be in the stands. These people would be in the stands. They would be there. And so what it's saying here is that's what we're thinking of when you think of that. The Faith Hall of Fame was listed in Hebrews chapter 11, and now he's going to tell you what to do with it. He says this, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witness, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with the perseverance, the race that's marked out for us. He's basically given the analogy that life is like a race. Okay, I don't know how many people like to run. I'm learning to like it a little bit. I don't run very far. But if you ran marathons and stuff, you would want to know. So he's saying, hey, when you run a race, when you run a marathon, when you run a sprint, whatever, you would throw off everything and want to run it without the least amount. If you're an athlete, what he's saying is those that have run before you, the giants that have run before you, you could learn from them. That's what he's saying. All the things, therefore, that I just said back here, now I want you to take and I want you to apply them to your life. And that's the context of what we're talking about here today, is that it's as though they're in the crowd, they're in the stands. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever been to an arena, I've been to FedEx Field. I was expecting applause, but okay, whatever. but FedEx Field for the Redskins, and it's loud. I don't know if you've ever been there. You can't hear what the crowd's saying. You can't hear what an individual is saying in the crowd. I don't know if you knew that. When you go there with 100,000 people in the room, 90,000 people in the room, it's like, or in the crowd, you're going, it just sounds like a, oh, You know what I'm saying? Now, you can tell what they're upset about, right? If you do something great, they're clapping and it's really loud. You know, and then if you do something they don't like, it's like, brrr, you know what I mean? Hopefully these guys aren't doing that. But he's saying, hey, it's as though those that have went before us, the people that are found in Hebrews chapter 11, the great people of faith, the greatest people of faith, it's like they're cheering you on. It's like they're in the crowd and they're cheering on your life. They see you running the race of life and they're saying, hey, we want you to do well. And where we're getting the series at today is more like this. Hey, what if God allowed us? John Maxwell wrote a book called Running with the Giants, which was kind of a remake of a book called Walking with the Giants a long, long time ago. So I don't want you to think I'm just stealing somebody's material. This thing has been redone. Church of the Highlands has done it. Andy Stanley has done it. Craig Rochelle's done it. Everybody's done this, okay? So this is not new with me. This is a big deal. John Maxwell wrote a book called Running with the Giants, and in that book he said, hey, what if in the crowd, what if instead of it just being a loud sound of all them cheering us and booing us and whatever, but what if the great people of faith could walk down out of the stands, just one of them? If we were thinking about a sporting event, you would say, hey, what if Michael Jordan could walk out of the stands and stand up in front of you and he said, hey, I'm going to spend a day with you. You think you'd be better at basketball? You might not be the best basketball player, but you'd be better off after you got coached by Michael Jordan, don't you think? Or I don't know about golf. I don't watch golf, but the only name I know is Tiger Woods. But if Tiger Woods said, hey, I'll spend the day with you, I bet you'd be a better golfer. Is that true? And what we're going to do during this series is it's as though God has taken some of these heroes of the faith. And it's not just that, hey, they're looking down from heaven and they're watching you, but they want to give you some practical life application, a life hack, if you will, to say, hey, if you apply this to your life, your faith will go better. Your life will go better. It could make a big difference in your life. And so the first one we want to look at, ironically enough, is Noah. Sorry. You probably think I had just planned this because of the storm, but I didn't, okay? I mean, we planned this message 6 months ago. And so what I want to say is that if there was ever a time that I would say that God has a message for you, it would be today. Because it's as though the universe has conspired. It's not the universe, though. It's God that said, hey, he knew you would be here at this service at this time to hear this message. And he said, you know what you need to preach about is Noah. So when I looked over the series, because there were several people in the Hall of Fame of Faith. And some people have preached like a 52-part message series on running with the Giants. And I was like, I don't think we're going to be doing that. I mean, like maybe 6. I had to pick 6. And as I looked at all the names, as I looked at Noah coming first, I thought, I don't know. I almost scrapped him. Isn't it amazing how that... But I felt kind of compelled to say, hey, maybe you need to keep Noah in there this time because you haven't really talked much about Noah. And then we have Hurricane Florence. And here we are talking about the man who weathered the greatest storm in the history of mankind. And it's on this day, at this time, in this message, and you're here. And I think God has a plan. He wants to share a thought with you today. Now, when I think about Noah, if you don't know about Noah, that's okay. You're welcome into the discussion today. If you go, hey, I didn't grow up in church. I know a lot of times people say, hey, you remember, we all know this story. Not everybody knows the story. I know that. And that's okay. If you don't, we're going to help you with the story today, and you're going to learn some things, and that's okay. If you do know the story, awesome. But just to give you a little brief, God called Noah to build an ark to save him, and he also sent all the animals onto the ark, okay? 2 animals of every kind. And so before I get started, I had a question for Noah, and maybe you guys can give me an answer, but the question I would have is this. Out of all the animals, there was a couple of them that I thought, at least one, in particular, I thought to myself, how come you didn't just do something about that? You know, at that point, you had 2 mosquitoes. And all you would have had to do to save us thousands and a lot of pain, all you had to do was go, and we're done, okay? These are questions pastors think of, okay? The other one is cats. Okay, we're just going to let that go right now. How many cat people do we have? Oh, wow. Dog people. We're definitely a church divided. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Cats, we can keep them, but mosquitoes. Can we all agree? Mosquitoes? Just smack them, be done. Okay. That's not the point of today's message. I'm not sure where we're going with that. All right. Back to Noah. A lesson from 6,000 years ago. If Noah were to come out from behind the stage, and I said, hey, Noah, would you come up and give us a message? I think Noah would come out here on the stage, and you know what I think he would say? He'd say, here's my lesson for you. One person can make a difference. That's his lesson. If you were to summarize the whole story of Noah, you know what I think he would say? One person can change the course of the world. Now, this week, you're going to have the opportunity to read about Noah. Okay, we read together in the Bible. I'm not a big reader, and so I had to learn how to read slow. I used to read the Bible really fast, and I didn't understand any of it. And so we read just one chapter a day together, and then we evaluate one day a week. So we read 6 chapters a week, okay, one chapter a day. So if you've never read the Bible, this is a great opportunity to start. You don't have to be perfect with it, but start. And you'd be amazed how when you start that habit, it can change your life. And on the back of your handout is a plan for journaling. If you go online, we did a little message on how to journal, a little easy methodology for journaling. If you struggle with reading the Bible, this is a great opportunity to start. But you're reading about the life of Noah. And if anybody's ever read about the life of Noah, you'll know this. When God paints his heroes, his giants of the faith, he paints them warts and all. Believe me, okay? Noah was not a perfect man. When you read this, it might shock you. In fact, sometimes pastors have said, I don't want you to read too much about it because you're going to be confused because there's a lot of really messed up stuff in the life of Noah, okay? Now you want to read it, right? It's like, I don't know about you now. It's like a tabloid thing. I got to read about Noah. What happened to him? It's some really creepy stuff. Some really weird stuff. It's some really hard stuff. It's some stuff that would say Noah wasn't a perfect man. Noah went on the ark, not perfect. How did God select Noah if he could be like that? And my point to saying that is this, not to put down Noah, because Noah is a huge man of faith, is to say this. If God could use Noah, he can use you. And you see, somebody here today, God sent you here today to say this. You don't think your life can make a difference, but it can. You think, yeah, that's good for Noah. That's good for this big man in the Bible. But as you read about the life of Noah, you're going to say, man, God used a really messed up person that had some really messed up stuff to happen in his life. And he used them to change the world. And God could use you too. And that's why this message is so important on this day. One person can make a difference. That's what I think Noah would say. All right, so let's go over the story of Noah. We're just going to cover just a few verses today. Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, and we'll skip down to verse 5. It says this, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Now, I don't know if you know what that sounds like to me, but if you were to look up the news today, if you were to look up Fox News or CNN News or whatever news you watch, in fact, if you Google it right now, I think you would agree with this statement, wouldn't you? You'd say, wait a minute, is Genesis 6 talking about 6,000 years ago? Or is it talking about today? Right? That he looked at the earth and he thought, how great is the wickedness? In the Bible, when Jesus talks about Noah, and he mentioned him a couple times. Can I tell you how he mentioned Noah? He said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the last days. Now, I don't do much on church prophecy because I find it confusing. I used to know all the answers when I was younger, and then the more I studied it, the more confused I got, and I realized there's so many people that talk about church prophecy in the end of time that I got very confused by a lot of it, and so I'm kind of like, I don't know what to think, and people say, hey, when is the Lord coming back, and we predict a date, and we know this, and there's a red heifer in Israel that means something, and there's this and that, and I studied all of it, and I'm just like, it's kind of confusing. But I think we can all agree to this, that in the last days, if Jesus is saying it's like in the days of Noah, how many people think we're in the last days? Right? We're in the last days. My point isn't whether we're in the last days or not, but if there's great wickedness on the earth and you're looking at it and you're going, man, I don't know what to do because the earth is so wicked. What does God want? And I think what God is doing is this. He's saying, hey, I need you. I'm looking for a person that can make a difference when the earth is so wicked. That's what he's saying. Okay, verse 6. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. When I read that, you know what it made me think of? It made me think of being a parent. Anybody? You ever felt, nobody wants to admit to that? But you get this baby, right? And they're so cute, right? I mean, there's a baby in the back, and he is so awesome, right? Most of the time. No, I'm just playing. Right? And we just saw baby Luke come in this morning, and Christian, and all the babies in our church. I mean, like, we have a whole bunch of babies. I don't know what happened last year, but we got a whole bunch of babies. And some really cool stuff. But then they get to be toddlers, right? And you're like, I don't know if you regret it then, because then it's kind of like, hey, you know, if they weren't so cute, right? And then God made them cute so we didn't destroy them and make more, right? I mean, that's kind of and they're so cute, so you can't do anything. But by the time they become teenagers, anybody have a teenager and you're thinking, I regret making you, right? I mean, like, sorry. I don't mean to make a joke of it, but we kind of know how he feels a little bit. But here's the thing. Here's what I think God's seeing. And this is what I want to make sure you know, because here's the problem. God is looking at the earth during the days of Noah. God is looking at the way he's looking at it now. And I want to make sure you know God is not blind to what is going on in a wicked world. Don't think that he is. By the end, you're going to find out what God is doing. But here's the thing. Be careful, because some of us think maybe God's just blind. Does he not see what's happening here? He regrets. You see, you have no idea. Well, actually we do, because we're living in the same days that we understand as we look at what one human being can do to another, right? Just like back then. That the way a human being can treat each other, that he goes, hey, I created a people that would love each other. I created people that would have communion with each other. I created people that would make love to each other. Instead, they turn that into sexual acts that's only taking from each other. That somehow I have to debase you for me to feel better. That I get energy from being lording over you. And they started having slaves back then. They started having sex slaves back then. Can I tell you something that's no different today? We think slavery's been abolished, but there's more sex slaves in the world today than any time in the history of mankind. I tell you, we live in a wicked world where God is looking and he is not blind. I can understand what God's talking about. Some days you feel that way when you look at just the wickedness that goes on. Verse 7. So the Lord said, I will wipe out from the face of the earth the human race I have created. And with them the animals and the birds and the creatures and the things that move along the ground, and I regret that I've made them. I understand about the human race, but what do the animals do, right? I mean, you know what I think that's telling us? That wickedness affects people around you. That it affected even the animals around you. You ever seen that happen? That a person that's wicked gets a dog, and now it's a mean dog? Something how that happens. It affects life. And he says, I'm going to wipe out the face of the earth. That would be, if we stop there today, and I think I've actually heard some messages in the past where that's kind of where they stop, and you're thinking, oh man, I don't know if I like this. But I want you to hear this next part, because this is the point. Verse 8 is the point. Verse 8 says this, but Noah, the worst people, but Noah. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. It means God was scanning for a person that he could use. This isn't a story in the Bible, this is the story. God is looking, and it says his eyes go to and fro around the earth, looking to find somebody that can make a difference. In the book of Ezekiel, he says that I was looking for someone that would stand in the gap. I think he was actually referencing Noah and the people of their day. He was doing a twofold thing. And in the book of Ezekiel, he said, I was looking, and my eyes scanned the whole earth looking for somebody that would stand in the gap. And the saddest words in the Bible there, you know what it says? And he found no one. He was looking for somebody to stand in the gap, but Noah, he found someone. He found someone that could make a difference. That's what we want to talk about today. Can I tell you something? He's still doing that. You believe there's a wickedness in our world? If you don't, just turn on the news, you'll see it. Unless you just shut yourself off from society and you don't want to believe it, then you don't understand where we live. And you might be going, well, how could God use me in such a wicked place? But he's saying, but Noah, and I'm going to tell you what happened in Noah, and then I want to tell you what I think Noah would want to teach us. As though Noah is just going to come out here and teach us some life lessons from his life. The story of Noah goes on, for those of you that might not have ever heard it, that God tells Noah, hey, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to destroy the earth with a flood. Now, you don't understand this because 6,000 years ago, they had never had water like that before. They had never seen a hurricane. They had never seen a flood. They really had seas, but they didn't have the ocean like we do now. The whole landscape of the earth was different. That's a subject for a different day. But absolutely unbelievable how much difference it was. The flood changed everything. So he said it's going to rain. And Noah said, what is rain? I don't know, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to build an ark. What is an ark? It's like a boat. What is a boat? Okay. All right, I'm going to give you specific instructions. So if you look in Genesis, God gives him detailed instructions architecturally how to build an ark that was going to hold all these animals and all this stuff and his family and anybody that would come into the ark to be saved. And then I'm going to destroy the earth with water, and I'm going to start over again with you. And that's exactly what he does. And then him and his family restart the earth. Puts a rainbow in the sky and says, I won't destroy the earth again with water. And there's something else about the rainbow, and we'll get to that later. But that's kind of the broad brush. It's kind of like talking about Titanic, and then you have the guy saying, hey, this is how the logistics are. And then the person that was actually on Titanic says, hey, anybody see the movie Titanic? Ungodly. No, I'm just playing. I'm just messing with you. It's a great movie. And so there's this scene where the guy says, hey, this is what it's like. This is what happened to Titanic. And then he said, hey, let me tell you something. The actual experience was quite a bit different. If Noah were here today, he'd say, yeah, I see you guys read that in a chapter, didn't you? The experience was quite a bit different. Can I tell you something? When I built the ark, it took me over 100 years to build it. Now, you know what? It was kind of cool. The first year, people kind of said, what is that? You're building a house. Second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. But I'm going to tell you, after year 80, and the grandkids of the people, when I started, are coming by to see the crazy old man building this thing that God still hasn't sent rain, God still hasn't done anything, it got a little bit not cool, okay? That's the experience. I'm going to tell you what the difference was, but let me tell you something. When the rains happened, it made all the difference in the world. God used me, and I can't believe it, I think that's what he would say, to change the history of mankind. By the way, we're all related to Adam and Eve. Did you know that? The first men and women that lived. We're all related to Noah and Mrs. Noah. I don't know her name. But we should know her, right? Because they were the first two people after the flood. We're all related to them. We're all tied to Noah. I didn't know if you knew that. It's absolutely correct. God destroyed everyone else, and so it's just Noah and his family. And here we are today talking about Noah, who made a difference, right? Because if it wasn't for Noah, can I tell you something? If you're a parent, you understand this, right? Your kid won't be here if you weren't here, right? You wouldn't be here if your parents weren't here. So if it wasn't for Noah, you get the picture? But Noah, one man made a difference. What I'd like to do today is this. I'd like to simply give you some lessons from the life of Noah. Some things that made a difference. He would say, hey, here's what it takes to be a difference maker. You ready? Number one, don't be afraid to stand out in the crowd. Noah would say, it took me over 100 years, and I'm going to tell you, you will see in this story that people were making fun of Noah the whole time he's building it, which is understandable. You know when they stopped making fun of him? When the rains and the floods came and they were on the outside of the door banging on it. Then it wasn't so funny. You get it? I'm going to give you a scripture you can write down and you can look it up later. There's many I could have used, but I just wanted to give you one today that you could take with you. Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 25. Proverbs 29 and verse 25, it says this, fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. The fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. That's Proverbs 29:25. You might want to write that down and hold on to it. Because here's what I know. If you're going to do what God's calling you to do, you're probably going to look foolish at some point. You see, you got to make you're going to have a decision to make. Do I want to make a difference? Or do I want to look cool? Now, the older we get, the less cool we look, right? Trends and all kinds of stuff. I would say that, except for here's what I know. The people that become the most risk-averse are typically the people that are getting older. We don't risk as much. We decide to become risk-averse. I don't want to risk what I have, but let me tell you something about faith. Let me tell you something about what God wants to do. And I think Noah would say the same thing. Hey, let me tell you something as a person who lived to be hundreds of years old. I think he would step out from behind the scenes and say, hey, look, you're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to follow God or do you want to look cool? You want to follow God? Are you okay with looking foolish? Because when you follow God, at some point, you're going to look foolish. And a lot of us won't do it as long as if we don't look cool. You get it? It makes me think about fleas. Sorry. There were probably other things I would think about for him, like, why did you keep fleas? Okay. But, you can train a flea. A flea only has a very tiny brain. I don't know if you knew that. It's a flea brain. It's very small. And so fleas are easy to train. If you go out and you get you a mason jar and you stick some fleas in it and you put a lid on it. Now, if you just put a lid on it, they'll die. Okay, so don't do that. Punch holes in the top so they can breathe, little holes, because otherwise they can get out. And a flea will jump. And I don't know if you know about a flea, but if you ever watch a flea, they can jump a long ways. Did you know that? If they were the size we are, we'd be jumping on skyscrapers and stuff. I mean, they're pretty awesome. I mean, when you think about it in that context. But a flea will jump, and he'll jump from the bottom of the jar, and he'll hit the top of the lid. Did you know that? And they will smash their flea brains out on the top of that jar trying to get out. They'll just bang, 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 bang. And almost to the place where they start to bleed. If you had a microscope, you could see the blood. But they're so small, you can't see them. And so they're banging their flea brains out until one flea that's a little smarter than the rest, right? He says, you know what? It doesn't hurt so bad if we don't jump so high. Is that true? It's true. And all the other fleas start to do, oh, that feels better. So we just won't jump so high. Let me tell you how you train a flea. You can unscrew the top of the jar, and you know what? They won't jump out, ever. That's how you train a flea. And they're trapped, not because they're trapped in their own mind. You know what? You could put new fleas in, and they'll learn to jump just like the other ones. Isn't that funny? Can I say something? Church people? People, so-called people of God? This is what we learn. Society says. The church down the road says. Nobody else has ever done this, so you can't do it either, right? God called you to that, but it got kind of hard, so maybe if I don't jump so high, it's easy. See, Satan wants you to believe there's a lid on top of your jar. You know what God is? God's a lid lifter. And what he's saying is, I want you to jump because I called you to something else. And just because it's hard doesn't mean, just because everybody else isn't doing it, just because people make fun of you, I want you to think about the account of Noah that says, hey, you know what? You know when Noah wasn't so funny anymore is when you're banging outside of the ark going, let me in, because now it makes sense. You starting to get it? I know that's true in my own life. Like the things that the transformation of following Jesus in my life, it changed my life. And I remember, I struggle with many things, but I'll just share two of them today. One of them was this. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we didn't start the church sooner in my life. One of them was my finances. I've never been good. I understand money. My problem is I'm a salesman, so I sell myself on spending money, okay? I don't mean to, but it happens every time with debt. And I remember somebody gave me a book called Total Money Makeover that changed my life. And I listened to the tapes by a man by the name of Dave Ramsey. I did not like him very much. And later on, he's now has a thing called Financial Peace University, which is awesome. But this is before Financial Peace. And this thing changed my life. And I was trying to apply certain principles. And I had started to get better. But I had accumulated so much debt. And I had all kinds of excuses. But I remember the day that Dave Ramsey said, I need to explain something to everybody. If you want to live like no one else, I'll tell you what it's going to take. You got to live like no one else. You're going to have to stop worrying about people making fun of you. You know, when me and Marie started down that journey a long, long time ago, when we first started it, there were some people that thought we were stupid, okay? We did some things that were outside the box, some things that we were going, hey, nobody else is doing this type of stuff. And we started doing them, and it started to make a difference, but they didn't see the difference at first. But all they saw was the behavioral change, and they went, hey, nobody else is doing this. Why are you doing that? That's weird. You should always have to do this, and you should always do that, and you always whatever. But it made a difference, and we got out of debt. You see, you got to stop being afraid to stand out from the crowd. See, God never made you to fit in. He made you to stand out. Now, please don't think I'm saying to stand out in a weird way. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying because you're a nonconformist and you want to get over there and do a weird thing that says, hey, we're trying to build a car and now we're reinventing the wheel. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? We've all done it, but we need to stop that. Unity, it takes teamwork to make the dream work. Believe me, I believe that. But what I'm saying is this, is that God has always called people to step out and make decisions that the crowd is going to go, that is weird. Why are you doing it that way? I remember when I went on a journey to losing weight about 4 years ago. Now, I haven't kept all my weight off. I'm not here to be a model or anything like that, but believe me, but I'm not what I used to be. But I remember when I first started, people were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why would you eat like that? You don't need to eat like this, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, after I lost weight, I had so many people that came and said, could you share with me how you did that? I didn't have to say anything. In fact, I didn't want to say anything because I'm going, I don't know if I'm going to gain it all back, so you may not want to follow this, you know what I'm saying? But after a couple of years, it was like, hey, can I do this? And we passed this same book around to a bunch of people, and they started to lose weight too. But at first, people make fun of you. Get it? I'm just telling you, what I've learned about life is this, is you can't be afraid to stand out from the crowd. As long as you are, you're never going to make a difference in this world. And I think that's exactly what Noah would say. He said, I got made fun of for 100 years. But on year 101, they didn't make fun of me anymore. They were screaming to be like me. You get it? Don't be afraid to stand out. Somebody here today, you needed to hear that. Okay, number two, don't be afraid to do something for the first time. It kind of goes along with the same school of thought, but don't be afraid to be the first. Can I tell you something I've learned as a church planner? We're not the smartest person in the room. We're the first person. You know what that means? If you're smart, you know, the chicken that crossed the road, if you're smart and you were the chickens, you'd all gather over here and you pick the dumbest one and you say, hey, you go across the road first. Why? Because we want to see if anything hits you, and if it doesn't, then maybe the rest of us will go. So first doesn't necessarily mean smartest. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of us think. But can I tell you, when I look at the Bible, how many times that God is calling somebody to do something for the first time? Nobody's ever built an ark. Nobody ever did what Moses did. Nobody ever did what Joseph did. Nobody ever did. I keep going down a list if you want. But the point is, most of the time, it's for the first time. It's for the first time. Don't be afraid. Nobody's ever done this. Nobody's ever done this. I'm going to give you a verse. This is about Noah. Hebrews chapter 11 in the Faith Hall of Fame, here's where you'll find Noah. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 7. By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By faith he condemned the world, and he became heirs of the righteous, that is, in keeping his faith. If I could summarize that for you, here's what I'd say. Maybe you want to write this down. To be a difference maker, you have to be more concerned about obeying God than looking foolish. Can I say that again? To be a difference maker, you have to be more concerned about obeying God than looking foolish. Let me ask you a question today. What is God calling you to take a leap of faith in? Some of you might not have a clue what I'm talking about. It might take you a while. Somebody here today, though, here's your problem. God called you to something, but it got hard, so you stopped. Get it? And he said, I never stopped calling you. You just stopped jumping. You see, it's time to take a leap of faith. You know, and every leap starts with a step. Did you know that? In a couple weeks, we're going to take a step. I'll explain what the step is like. On October 13th, we're going skydiving, okay? I've been watching the videos of it. Can I tell you what it is? It's one step. That's it. And then all of a sudden, it's real. That's where you are. God's calling you outside the plane. God's calling you outside the boat. God's calling you to do something no one else did for the first time. What is it that God never stopped calling you to do that you stopped doing because it got hard? I'll give you a couple of things you can consider. Maybe you came here today and you're looking for a word from the Lord. Before I do, I just want to share a little bit, just so you know, I have some experience in this area myself. In starting this church, we started 8 years ago. That's kind of the cool part of the story. It was the 15 years before that that wasn't the cool part of the story. What led up to that moment. I believed, and I know about how long ago it was, 22 years ago, I wrote a letter in a church service, and I told Jim Wall that was at Community Church, I said, hey, I really believe that God is calling me to be a pastor. And he said, well, maybe I should meet with you. I took it as though he said, I'm going to help you start a church. He actually said, no, I'm going to just meet with you. Now I look back at it. But he was very encouraging. He met with me. He mentored me. We did some things. We talked about church planning. I learned a whole bunch. I wanted to plant a church. But then after that, after about a 5-year process, my life started to fall apart. I told you some about debt. My wife had post-traumatic stress from some horrible things that happened to her. She had some health problems. We almost lost her. It got hard. Can I tell you, along the way, I met some pastors, and they said, I don't think this is for you. All right? And someone wouldn't even meet with me. You preach sometimes, and they go, yeah, I don't know about that. They didn't call you back. That's kind of a good sign to say, not very good. Don't have enough money to go to college. Don't have this. Don't have that. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. It can't happen. And you keep taking the step. Keep taking the step. Keep taking the step. And eventually, life got better. God healed my wife. God helped me get an education. I packed the last 2 years of my college into 4 years. I'm a real overachiever. That diploma sits on my wall because it's a testament that says God can do it. Get it? And on September 12th, 2010, let me just back up just a little bit further. 2010, September 12th, on August 10th, 2010, we didn't have a building to meet in. We have somebody here from Blvd. You guys know what that's like. You met in a garage if you didn't know. Thomas still had the same type journey. It's amazing how God does that. We didn't have a building. And we came here and we found Alan Brown's building. His kids were here this morning because they attend our church now. And so Alan Brown in this building, he said, oh, yeah, we'll do it. We signed the lease. And then we met with Windsor. We found out Isle of Wight is not very friendly all the time with their zoning stuff. And so they came out and they said, everything about this building is a no. You don't get occupancy. You can rent the building. You just can't meet in it. We said, what? We got a service plan in 3 weeks. Are you kidding? We've invited everybody. We got to. And I had a guy that was helping me out, and he came there and he said, hey, how do we make it a yes? And we met here, and they said, well, first off, you got a garage door right there at the time. And they said, what if we left the door open? Okay. Well, you don't have handicapped bathrooms. What about handicapped porta potties? There's no wonder anybody came back to this church when we started. The first service, we had 5 trains go by. We had to stop the service 5 times. But on the 12th of September, we had critical mass in this building. And we're not the largest church. We've had a lot of problems. We got a lot of issues. I got a lot of issues. But it happened. This room was packed. We went through benchmarks that other churches that I know that didn't make out. It's amazing what God did. We never came to be the biggest. We came to help connect people that are unconnected and all alone. You want to know why? Because I'm a person that was unconnected and all alone. This is personal for me. This isn't business. I'm not a professional pastor. I never will be. I'm called because that's what happened to me. Somebody helped me. Don't be afraid to do something for the first time. My question for you today is this. What is it that God has called you to take a leap of faith for that you stopped doing? Or you have an answer? Here's a couple of them. I'll give you a couple. Maybe God's saying something else. He's whispering. By the way, God doesn't, when he's really talking, he whispers. You get it? A still small voice. Here it is. Somebody here today, you know what he's saying? Don't quit. You came here today and you're thinking about quitting. And God's saying, don't quit, whatever that is. Somebody here today, you did quit. And he's saying, I didn't accept your resignation. Don't quit. I'm not done. You know how many times I quit being a pastor? I'm going to tell you what, this is not my dream. There's 2 things I said I would never do. One is live in Windsor /Zuni. Okay, sorry. You didn't hear that last part. Zuni, still not. Okay, anyway. I'm just playing. And be a pastor. You want to know why? My dad pastored a church right down the road. I love it. We're saved there. It's awesome. Never wanted to be a pastor. Believe me. You're a pastor's son, you don't want to be a pastor. God called me to do both. He wouldn't let it go. That's you. And then you start down the journey, you say, okay, I'll finally surrender my life, and then it gets hard, and you go, yeah, you can't mean this, because this is way too much. And God's saying, I never let you go. Why'd you quit? Somebody need to hear that today. See, you're right on the brink of quitting. You've already quit, and you go, well, that was 10 years ago, and God said, well, I'm sorry. You did read the same, well, you'll see a verse in a second. A year is like 1,000 days to God. You'll find out it's exactly like that, isn't it? God didn't say quit. Why'd you quit? Here's one. Step up. You've been sitting in the seat long enough. And God's been calling you to step up. And you got every excuse in the world. Well, they hurt my feelings, and they said this about me. And by the way, when you step up, it ain't going to get any easier. But God is saying if you want to be a difference maker, Noah is coming 6,000 years, and he's standing here, and he's saying, hey, it's not going to be easy, but if you want to make a difference, you're going to have to step up. You get it? Okay. Somebody, he's saying, take a risk. You become risk-averse. You know, the older we get, and I'm talking to the ones that maybe you're like me, you're starting to get some white in your hair and stuff. Younger ones want to jump out. The older we get, the less risk we want to take, right? But can I tell you something about faith? It doesn't require faith to not go to places that are scary. Did you know that? There's not one story in the Bible that I see where the great men of faith didn't face something really scary. Some of them walked on water. Some of them went through fire. Some of them built an ark. Some of them led the children of Israel out of Egypt. What's God calling you to do? Take the risk. Can I read the verse for you again in Proverbs? Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Wherever God is, that's the safest place for you. If that's where he's calling you at, that's the safest place for you. Take the risk. Somebody, he's saying, apologize now. What? That's kind of out of place, isn't it? No. You've been holding that grudge long enough. Forgive. Let go of that resentment. Some of you, you've been making excuses and you've been vilifying the other person, and it's time to apologize and make things right. And you know you can't go any further because every time you try to serve God, it's right there, isn't it? That person comes up, you go, I would serve God, but get it right. Stop it. Can I tell you something? Noah didn't have any time for that stuff. Noah didn't have regrets in the world, but let me tell you something. If Noah kept grudges, he would never build the ark, and he'd say, it was all these people's fault for making fun of me. It was all these people's fault for making fun of me. It was all these people's fault for criticizing me. They said mean things to me, so I just stopped building the ark. And now I'm going to die in the flood with them. Somebody here today, that's exactly where you are. You got a God-given calling on your life, and you stop because somebody said something mean to you. By the way, when you step up, they're going to say some more mean things to you. It's time to let that stuff go. It's time that maybe you hurt somebody else and you need to apologize. You know you can't get past it. Okay. Somebody here today, God's saying, get help. Get help. You've been struggling with an addiction your whole life. You've been trying to white knuckle this thing long enough. You need to get help. Come see us. We'll help you. Okay? We'll help you find help. We're not going to fix you. There's only one person that can fix you, and it's not me. Okay? So please don't call me and say, fix me, John. I'm messed up too. It takes one to know one. You get it? And you know what I found in my life? I cannot do this alone. And neither can you. You need to get some help. And we're here today, man. We're going to be here after the service. There is nothing. Let me tell you something today. This day was not about having the biggest crowd, and Florence really messed us up on that, okay? No, it didn't. God had a plan for today for you to be here. And if you're the only person in the room, then this service is worthwhile because if you need to get help, today is the day. You are welcome. You belong here. Don't you leave this room and say, oh, they judge me. I'm not judging you. We're one of you. There ain't no us and them. There's only us. Okay, all right, I'm done. Get some help. All right. Number 3. Or not number 3. Come back. I'm not ready for that yet. The other one is this. Get out. Not out of our church. Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. Get out. Somebody here today is in a toxic relationship. I'm not talking about your spouse, so please don't go there. Somebody here today, you're in a toxic relationship, and you have been enabling long enough. Get out. Somebody here is in an immoral relationship, and you know you can't be in that relationship and have the power of God in your life, and you needed to hear today that God is saying, you want us to take a step forward, you want us to take a step out, you're going to have to get out of that toxic relationship. Some of you here today, God's calling you to another ministry. This is hard for a pastor to say, believe me, I want everybody. Okay. Get out. It ain't our church. It's not our brand. It's the church of Jesus Christ. And one thing I think that's happening in our community in Isle of Wight County is the churches are starting to unite because we realize there's one church of Jesus Christ and we can be a voice. But let me tell you something today. If God is calling you somewhere else, it's time. You get it? But if he's called you to be here, then be here. Stop making excuses. I might go, I might stay, I might go, I might stay. Now is the time to make a difference, and you can't make a difference as long as you're trying to figure out if you're going to build the ark. You get it? If you're in, be all in. If you're not, if God is calling you somewhere else, then let us lay hands on you and pray over you and send you out, and hopefully we'll give you some money to do whatever it is that God's calling you to do, because that's what we want to do. You get it? Get out. Okay. Slow down. This is the one for me. If I showed you my quiet time over the last year, I spent a lot of time in prayer and meditation. And one of the things that comes up, the word from the Lord for me, you know what it is every day? Slow down. Some of us are real doers, and we love this. Get out, do the thing, go do it, be big. And then God says, wait a minute, well, you know what I need you to do? Slow down. You want to know why? Because you're going to miss people. You see, I'm so amped. I don't need people to catch up with me. I'll just drive them. You know what I'm saying? No, you won't. You got to take some time, synchronize with the people around you. You got to take some time to see the people around you. You got to observe. You got to slow it down with people fast, slow, and slow is fast. And God is saying, hey, I don't need you to go fast. Believe me, if there's any lesson I learned in starting this church was I started 22 years ago with a calling. And this church has only existed eight of those years. And then some of the stuff that we've done here, I'm like, can we hurry up? I got so. No, slow down. God's got it. Pay attention to God. Maybe you get me one of these bracelets like I do because I snap it every now and then. Every time you want to amp up, you got to go, God. Every time you got to have the conversation and you're thinking about amping up that conversation, slow down, slow down, slow down. Okay. God's telling somebody, call them. There's somebody out there that you need to call today. You've been putting it off. You've been waiting. And believe me, when Noah said this, he would say, you know what? You know what the hardest part of this journey was? Is when God shut the door to the ark. And here's what we heard. You get it? They're pounding on the ark, screaming, please let us in, please let us in, please let us in. Can I tell you something about our time? The ark is not closed. Look around this room. Who's not here? Who is it you're not taking time to call? Who is it you're not taking time to connect with? Who is it that you're letting stupid resentments keep you from getting in relationship with people? Who is that? Because they're out there and they're pounding on the ark. I want you to think about that because there will be a day that we can't reach them anymore. But now is our time. We can make a difference. Call them. Pick up the phone. Don't text them. Call them. Go over to their house. Get it straight because the ark will close one day, and that is not today. And it is our job to go out and make a difference. And I think if Noah was here, he'd say, I would give anything to get as many people on that ark. You have no idea what it's like for people to be lost. Make a difference. Stop the foolish pettiness. Call them. Okay. And the last thing is this. Start today. Start today. Start today. Start now. Okay? So here was the point. Don't be afraid to stand out from the crowd. Don't be afraid to do something for the first time. And the final point is this. When you see a rainbow, remember that one person can make a difference. Every time you see a rainbow, remember that one person can make a difference. I had a picture of a rainbow, and then I got this one. This is from this week. You know where that is? That's Wright Brother Memorial. And there are 3 rainbows over Wright Brother Memorial this week. If you don't believe that God is giving you a sign today, I don't know what more you can do. This is Wright Brother Memorial on a sermon about Noah that was planned 6 months ago, and we had a different picture in here. You get it? And he's saying, hey, wake up. You can make a difference. Noah would say, hey, there was something that God put in the sky, and he said, I will never destroy the whole earth. Didn't say we'd never have a flood. He said, I will never destroy the whole earth with a flood again. And can I tell you, Noah would say, but that's not what it meant to me. You know what it meant to me? One person can make a difference. That's you. In the book of 2 Peter, it says this about Noah. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 6. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. Verse 7 says, by the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction. It's given a dichotomy saying, as it was in the days of Noah, so it is today. But do not forget this one thing. It sounds like we're reading from Genesis, doesn't it? The world was destroyed. And he added one last thought to say, hey, it's just like it is now. But Noah. Get it? But don't forget this one thing. What's the one thing? With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. What? That's weird. Okay. That's a weird thought, isn't it? Except for the next part. See? You're in the middle of it, and you needed to hear a word from God. Don't you forget this next part, verse 9. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise. Sometimes it feels like 1,000 years. Did you know? Anybody there right now? You're right in the middle of it, and you're thinking, it feels like 1,000 years. I keep calling and calling and calling, and where is God? And God is saying, I'm right here. Don't you give up. Noah's standing right here, and he's saying, you know what? It'll make sense in year 101. Okay. You can make a difference in the whole world if you don't give up. Because why? Because God is not slow in keeping his promises. Some understand slowness. In the King James Version, it says slack. I like that word because we used to say slacker, right? God is not a slacker. God is not slow in keeping his promise. Instead, he is patient, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Can I tell you what our church is built around, or should be built around? This verse. You know what Jesus is waiting for? You know why the world is so wicked? Because he's waiting for somebody else to get in the ark before he closes the door. He's saying, I want to leave it open as long as I can. And you are here to make a difference in this world. You are here to share that Jesus Christ came and he died and he rose from the dead. But you have to connect with people that are disconnected and all alone. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe that's you. My point to today is this. One person can make a difference. Can we change that? You can make a difference. You see, many of us, we pray to God, God, please change this world. How could you let all this happen? And he said, I did make a difference. I sent you. I sent you. Not for the whole world, but for a Greek word called oikos, which means your sphere of influence. Did you know that? I sent you here for your sphere of influence. How could you change your world? Might not be the biggest thing. Might be Windsor, get it? Might be Zuni. There's a few people out there. Just playing. One person can make a difference. One person can make a difference. So here's my challenge for you. Will you? Will you step out? Will you take the next step? Maybe your first step is today to say, I never knew God. I came here today, maybe, and here's my danger. You might be thinking, hey, if I'm new, that might mean to be the person that don't know God. Maybe they know God, but maybe you've been here since day one and you still don't know God. You know about God. You know a whole bunch of stuff about God, but you've never experienced God. Today is the day, man. Don't leave here because God will do for you what you cannot do for yourself. Jesus came and he died on the cross for your sins and he rose from the dead and he wants to have a relationship with you if you'll let him. You can't make a difference without him. The other thing is this, you can't do it alone. That's one thing I've learned. I don't have a clue what God's calling you to do, and I hope you'll let us know, and I hope we can pray for it. But here's one thing I know. You can't make a difference alone. That's not how it works. Everything about the church has to do with plural. It means that we're together. It means that I have a gift, and you have a gift, and we all have a gift. And when God puts them together, then it makes the body of Christ. That Jesus had all the gifts, and he dispersed it amongst us, and we need each other. Can I tell you, that's my faith journey? There was a time in my life I stepped away from church, so I don't want anything to do with church. I'm going to get out of church because all I was about was this. When I went to church before, it was all about image. You ever been in an image church? It's how I look, how I act, if I wear my suit right, if I do my stuff right, if I look like, smell like, be like. When my life fell apart, my image came apart, and so did my church life. Until somebody grabbed me and said, that ain't what church is about. It isn't even about me being able to fix you because I can't, but I can hold on to you. Get it? You can belong. You belong here. You get it? You belong here, but are you here? Some of you guys, you've been coming here a long time, you still don't belong here. You're not part. You're on the outskirts. You sit in the seat, but you've never really been part. And I'm calling you out today to say, step up, man. Step out. Step out. God's calling you to make a difference. You can't do this by yourself. As long as you're going to do this alone, you can't do it. You can't do it in a seat because here's what's going to happen. When the storms of life come, not if, when the storms of life come, they're going to knock you right on out of this place. And I've seen it. When the storms of life come and you have no one to hold on to, you're going to go, no one is here for me. We want to be here for you. Step out. Step in. Get it? Step in the ark with us. Be with us. Okay. How do you do that? Next week, come back. After church, we're going to have a meal called the pastor's meal. And if you've never been part of our church, it's going to be a real simple meal where all you're going to do, come eat with us. We'll introduce you to one person. And you go, how could that make a difference? Because they're going to help you connect. We don't have to explain everything. It won't be a long, drawn-out thing. You'll enjoy a great meal. And then what? I'll get out of the way. I promise not to preach to you. I'll get out, and you'll talk to one person, and they'll help you connect. You want to get water baptized. You want to do these things. You want to talk about what faith is. We'll talk to you about all those things, and it will take some time. But the first step is really just connect. Next week, we're going to do that. If they're on your connection card, there's a place that says, hey, I want to attend the pastor's meal. Maybe you never have. Maybe you've been here a long time. We say it's for new people. Maybe you're not new. You just never connected. You're welcome to come, okay? Don't be ashamed. Don't be sad. Don't be afraid that you're going to look foolish. Get it? Because what are you worried about? You worried about what somebody else is going to say? Can I tell you something today? Somebody needs this word, and I just want to make sure I say it. You are not who people say you are. That's one thing I've learned in life. If you're paying attention to what everybody else says, you're going to go all up and down with public opinion. Can I say something else? You are not who you say you are. You're not who your internal negative monologue that runs in your head over and over and over again. You're not that. You know who you are? You're who God says you are. You hang it on the words of God. Let me tell you something. God can use you to make a difference. So here's what I want to do. I want to pray for you guys today. Whatever it is that you need to do, let us know. If you want to write down on your connection card, please do. You step out. Do your thing. Because one person can make a difference. Can I pray for you guys today? Let's stand for prayer.